guys, I'm a Woodcraft hamster and I want to show you how to make a spatula or cooking spoon or whatever you like to call it from a piece of green wood. So what I've got here is a piece of birch which I've had kicking around for a little while now, and what I'm planning on using for this is a froe, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a moment. I'll use the axe, probably end up using a knife and maybe even a spoon knife on it as well. So to start with, you're going to want to split down a piece of wood. Now for that, I mean, you can use an axe, you can use wedges, I mean, you can use a saw if you really want to, but the best way I've found is to use a froe. And whenever you're using one of these, you need to use a froe mallet. This blade is quite a thick cross section at the top that then tapers down to not a sharp edge as such. You know, you won't cut yourself on this, but it is it's pretty pointed, so you obviously get a good break into the wood. And what you don't want to do is hit this with anything metal. Don't use a hammer. You know, anything metal you've got lying around, avoid it. I mean, you can use a stick, you can use a lump of wood. This is the froe mallet I made a couple of weeks ago. It's basically just a heavy lump of wood. I've shaved down the handle a little bit just to give me a little bit more purchase, make it a bit more comfortable to use. And all you want to do is line it up on your piece of wood. Probably looking for about 1.5 to 2 inches thick maybe. And once you've lined it up, you get your froe in. Now if this was a bigger piece of wood, I'm probably going to do it with this. You just basically give the froe a twist, and you can do this on much larger pieces of wood. I mean, you can make beams out of whole trees with this kind of thing. Sometimes you can use just the froe, other times you might need to use a few wedges and bits and pieces as well. But for the purposes of this, you basically take off a nice piece like this. Now, you are able to control the split to a degree with the froe. Obviously this is the end we started at the top, and it's narrowed right down at the end here, and obviously it sort of thickens out as it goes along. Now for us, this is about the right kind of size. We don't need any bigger than this. Don't need to worry about this part here, because we'll end up losing part of this anyway. So what you want to do to start with, take a spatula. You can take one you've already got. You can make up a mock-up. You can cut something out of cardboard. I tend to find I like using a template. The reason for that is that if you don't use a template and you just work everything by eye, you can still make a pretty good spoon or spatula out of it. However, you can kind of go offline a little bit. So if you've got an outline to work to, which is what we use this for, you've basically got something you can work towards, a bit of a guide if nothing else. So all I'm going to do is go around this spatula. It doesn't have to be perfect, as I say, you're just working along this line, and I mean that's quite a pale line, but that shouldn't matter too much. You know, you've got enough to see by there. If you want to, you can mark it out a little bit more just to make it a bit more obvious. Just gives you a little bit of something to see where you're going. So what you want to do first is basically just rough this out. Now you can use the froe again if you want. You can split down some of the sides. For me, basically straight off. you've taken almost half your wood off straight away there. So again, once you've split down the bulk of it, you can start shaping around your outline. What I normally tend to do is I'll start from the top or the head of the spatula and work my way down. That way you're not risking cutting this way, coming in too far, and taking off some of the width of your spoon handle, spoon head. So essentially, and what you can do with this, you can take big sweeping cuts, you can take smaller, almost sort of planing cuts off. Entirely up to you how confident you are. You know, if you're used to using an axe regularly, that's fine. You know, you do whatever works best for you. Trick I learned a number of years ago from a guy that used to do some work like this was basically you take cuts along like this. You can go a little bit deeper, and then as you come down, you take quite a lot of material off in one go because you've obviously already broken up the grain along here. Okay, so we're fairly close down to some of the lines now. You can carry on using your axe, or you can start using a knife. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so once you've roughed it out to sort of this kind of point, you've got a couple of options. You can carry on with the axe and pretty much do the whole thing with it if you really want to. You can get you can start paring down a little bit more with a knife. And really what you want to do at this stage is just bring it down to the marked out lines that you've already put in. And one thing I use quite regularly is this, which is it's a combination between a draw knife and a push knife, and you can use it in both ways, or I certainly use it in both ways. So you can have your piece of wood, say here, and you can push along the top and take off fairly controlled shavings. Alternatively, you can have it this way, and you can pull towards. Now, obviously, pulling towards yourself with a sharp blade is always a little bit risky. Obviously, if you know what you're doing and you're confident in your skills, that's fine. I tend to use it pushing that way just because I find it more convenient, and there's obviously less to think about. So for something like this, where you want to bring it down to these lines, I use this position because I don't have a vise in here. I haven't got a shave horse, which is something I'm working on. Hopefully I'll do a video on that at some point when I get around to making one. But for something like this, you can put the end of your piece of work against a tree stump or whatever it is you're using. You can sit down, you're fairly comfortable, and if you push against it with your stomach, you get quite a good grip on there. And it's quite a nice way to get good, even cuts. You can remove quite a lot of material fairly quickly. And having both hands on this gives you a lot of control. You can tilt, you can move how you want to move. That does happen occasionally. Okay, so we're pretty close down to our lines, and it just needs to be tidied up just a little bit before we move on. Okay, so once you've got to around about here, so you've pretty much brought yourself in line with all of your lines. I've left a little bit of excess on there just so you can shape it down a little bit later so you don't get too small. And you can sort of see here, left this quite thick. Now the reason for that is we want to take this down and bring it sort of in line with about here, which we can either do with the draw knife. I'll probably use the axe because it's a little bit quicker. And one of the reasons for keeping this part quite so thick is that when I start shaping this down, I want to start almost at a little angle up here, so it's slightly more spoon shaped. I just prefer that as a design. You can have it completely flat if you want to. Really, it's entirely up to you. It's personal preference at this stage. Okay, so that is basically your spatula. Again, it needs some tidying up, which I will do. But that's basically it roughed out. You know, from this point onwards, I mean, you can carry on using the axe if you want to. You can move over to a knife, a draw knife. You could even get a plane or something on there if you really wanted to. The thing to remember about this is that this is green wood. It's still got a lot of water in it. It's still got a lot of moisture in there. And as this dries, potentially it will or can split. There's a couple of ways you can try to prevent that. You know, I can leave this out here like this, a couple of days a week. Hopefully it should dry out. It might warp a little bit. You might get a bit of a twist in there. Won't affect its use, but depends how pretty you want it to look. Alternatively, you can take something like a plastic bag, put it in there, wrap it up, just leave a little hole for the moisture to escape out of. Leave it in there overnight, take it out, give it a couple of hours out in the open air, let it dry out a bit more. Take either a fresh plastic bag or turn the other one inside out so that any moisture that's in there goes back on the outside. Leave it in there overnight again. What I would recommend is don't take this indoors. The sort of the heat and the warmth that you find inside in a house with central heating on, or even if it's summertime you've got no heating on, it will make the wood dry out too quickly. What then happens is that the moisture forces its way out quicker than it's designed to, I suppose you'd say, and you end up getting a big split that will run down the entire grain of the wood, and basically you've just wasted your time trying to make a spoon. So there you have a very basic spatula. I mean, you can thin this down a bit more if you want. I mean, this will work perfectly for cooking food as it's designed to do. If you want to, you can let this dry out a little bit. You can sand it down, you can oil it. You know, if you want to use it at home, or you know, you want to make something like this as a gift for someone, or what have you. Or if you happen to be out, you know, doing some bushcraft, you're staying overnight somewhere, you don't want to carry too much with you when you go, and all you've got with you is you know, an axe and a knife. You can make something like this in a very short period of time, and you've got something you can use to cook with, and you can also eat with it as well. I started making one of these a couple of days ago, and this one I do want to use indoors. So I'm letting it dry out. I mean, obviously I've rounded in comparison, you know, I've rounded this one off on the back. Once it's dry enough, I'll use a bit of sandpaper on there as well. I've made a slight depression here, so it's more like an oversized spoon, and you know, you can make that a little bit deeper, which I probably will do. But you know, you can cook with this, and then when you're done, you sit there and use it to eat your meal. So very simple to make, doesn't take a great deal of time, doesn't take very many tools. You know, I've used the axe and the froe and the draw knife and the knife, but really, I mean, you can make this in its entirety with an axe. Axe and a knife probably make the fine work slightly easier. You don't need to use a froe. You can use an axe to split a log of that size. You can use the axe and maybe make a couple of wooden wedges just in case it gets stuck. And there you have it. That's a very simple, basic spatula for cooking. Thanks.